It's a process of enormous bravery editing as well, isn't it? I mean, the sort of
Yeah.
the fiddling of one word in a sentence type of editing, I find I can do without too much stress. But the type of editing that says there's something
This out.
actually wrong here and I'm going to have to make this a lot worse.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
put all of my effort into doing this as well as I possibly could. And in order to make it better, I'm going to have to dismantle it at huge personal and emotional cost before I then recreate. And having the brave, I've got better at it over the years, but having the bravery to do that dismantling, thinking I may never be able to make it any better. I may over time cumulatively make it worse. It's which is not the way it tends to actually happen, but the sort of the the type of courage it takes to do that type of editing is something that my writing teachers never talked about.
One thing is that compared to, I don't know, painting, we're lucky because you can keep that old draft. You don't have to
Yes.
take the
Oh
canvas down
yes.
to do the new version. But I think the other thing that I found very helpful is to recognize that there is no one perfect version. It doesn't exist. If you had started your first draft 2 days later,
It would be different.
it would be slightly
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to make your peace with that.
Yeah.
Accepting the fact that there's more than one version. I mean, my daughter is at art school. And I was talking about actually some of the revisions that I'd done for Holland House, and I've been, it's at least the third go round of trying to make the Bruegel Boy work because I'm very stupid and I never ever get first drafts to work properly. I think they work, but then I get a sorted input that actually, Emma, they don't, and then I have to get back in there and rework it. The only one of which that's not the case was This Is Not a Book by Charles Darwin, which wrote itself in about 6 weeks. And
Wow.
I mean, I tinkered. The beginning needed a bit of go, and I tinkered with bits and pieces. But fundamentally, how it came out first was how it has been ever since.
Brilliant.
But that's really not the case with much of my other fiction, and I think it is.
That's so interesting.
I was talking to my daughter about it because she's, she did foundation course and now she's in the third year of a 4-year course in animation, and of course it's all been about finding out finding out her voice, what she wants to do, figuring all of that out, and then sticking to it like blazes, absolutely clarifying that. And she was amused at my willingness to say, well, Robert says it doesn't work, so I'm doing that. And I thought, well, it's partly because it's a representative reader. Your editor is your representative reader, or your beta readers or whatever. And so I can think it works for me, but in some ways we have the least helpful relationship to our own work. We know the effect we're trying to have. I mean, one of my best beta readers is one of my sisters, which in some ways is incredibly helpful. She has an English degree. She's a maths teacher. In some ways it's incredibly helpful, but in some ways it isn't, because we read all the same books as children. We've got all the same references. Yeah. She's not very useful as a representative reader of a really different kind of reader, if you like. So I think if you want to communicate, you do have to make your peace with the fact that the other people are not you, and you may need to change how you do something to have the effect that you were hoping to have all along. If that makes any sense. And once you've realised that, you also realise that good is partly going to depend on the reader.
Oh yeah.
And every reader is going to see it in a slightly different way. You are never going to get that sort of objective, absolute, the best version that could ever be of this project.
I have a post-it note stuck on my fridge at the moment that says there is no such thing as perfect, as I try and pin down the last edits in this book.
I think there is such a thing as right.
There's certainly such a thing as good enough.
Yeah. Well, and good enough, I don't know. I think
in the most positive way.
Right is necessarily linear. Less right and more right. I mean, I think it is, but I think there's more than one kind of right, which is equal. Your nieces can all be lovely, and they're all different. You wouldn't say that one's better than another. You might say one of them's better at swimming and one of them's better at ballet, but or reading, or taller, or whatever. But you don't reduce it. I mean, it's partly just the reductiveness of the possibility of reducing a novel to a number of stars, really. And once I'd made my peace with that, I thought, well, all I can do is just write the one that each time I come to it, I get more right than it was doing than it was yesterday.
Yeah, and eventually you get to a point of I put this word in the last draft, I've taken it out in
Yeah,
this next draft, even though it's 4 months since I last read this draft, I'm putting this in and out.
yeah, yeah.
It doesn't actually matter. This is
No,
what
it
this
doesn't actually
tells me.
matter.
There is a point where the tweaks no longer matter.
I'm just pushing commas around, and also, what I'm gaining from this, I will lose somewhere else.
Yes,
So
yes,
time to send it out.
yeah.
Andile, what was it like for you being edited? Was it the first novel you wrote?
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
my debut,
yeah,
so I'm still very fresh in.
yeah.
It was interesting. I think, it was nice. I think Robert and Karen were great. I was very eager. Like I wanted to, to learn, and I wanted the book to be in good shape. So whatever they said, this works, this doesn't work, I reflected on that, and then
Mm.
yeah, I think I had a very good editing process.
How long did that editing process take, just out of interest?
It was, and I think it took long because whatever long is because of my procrastination. I was procrastinating a lot, but it came out probably 6 months.
Mm. That sounds
If I
fairly normal
if
to me.
yeah, if I put it together or even less. Yeah, it didn't take long because we had the first
Yeah.
editing process when the Island Prize long list came out, the short list. And so I edited with Robert just to iron it out. And then to get it ready for publishing, then I worked with Karen. Yeah, but it didn't take long. I think the editing that I found to be really like was my MA editing. And I think it's because with the novel, I understood the novel and I understood what I wanted to say or what I
Mm.
wanted it to say, the themes and all of that. But with academic writing, it's because I didn't really fully understand the frameworks and all of that. So it was quite, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
challenging.
It's a very different
Yeah.
ecosystem. I've worked with academic writing quite a lot, with Royal Literary Fund fellowships and things like that. And yeah, it is a whole, it's a whole way of operating which one doesn't necessarily encounter in any other world, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the people within the academy don't realise how weird it is. If you see what I mean. And that I used to say to students, academic writing is not rocket science, but it's also not, it's not natural. It's a set of skills and you can learn them, but I bet nobody ever got around to teaching you. But don't worry, because now we'll learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy being edited, I think,
Mm,
because
yeah,
I know that it's for the better. I know that
yeah.
it's because you want this thing to be better understood.
My husband says whenever he comes up with an idea, my first response is no. And I think it's probably true. I think it's partly just, well, I did it that way for a good reason, So
Yes.
also when someone, particularly if somebody says, I don't think this works, I don't think it should be in here. All you can really see is a space, and the thing
Mm.
that you put in that space could be. I mean, it's a bit like if someone says, I think that sofa doesn't suit the sitting room, let's get rid of it. You know,
What are you
then
gonna
all you
do?
can see is somewhere that you can't sit down.
Yeah.
Whereas if they came up to you and say, look, I know that is something to sit on, but look, this one would look so much better.
Mm,
And you say, you know
mm.
what, you're absolutely right. It does need to be a bit lower, and I think that darker green works much better. And money willing, one might make the change. But the trouble with editorial feedback is that they can't tell you what the new sofa might look like.
Yeah.
And if they do, they're almost certainly wrong.
I was going to say, they are almost certainly wrong. So I'm just coming to the end of this very, very enjoyable editorial
Mm.
process, and about 50% of what my editor has suggested, I have
Yeah,
done,
yeah,
and the other 50%, I've either said no,
yeah.
or or I've said, I can see why you're suggesting this, brackets, and the solution you're suggesting is wrong, and so
Yeah.
I will do something, but I'm going to do
It
something
won't be that.
different.
Well, I think that's one of the other problems
Lovely.
with editing, actually, and and I'm, because I work with writers a lot, I'm often on both sides of it, is that people will often express a problem in terms of a solution.
Yes. Whereas actually what you want is them
And
to
actually
identify the
what you have
problem.
to do is sort of dig backwards through it to find out what the original problem, because if a beta reader who either you're contracted to because they're your editor, or just because you've hired them, or you trust them and you want their input, if they say it doesn't work, then you have to listen to it. But about 30% of the time they'll be absolutely bang on and you're going, duh, yes, of course. And about 30% of the time you think, no, absolutely not. It's just not that kind of book, or possibly you're not that kind of reader. Certainly, sending work out to agents and things like that. You can just think, okay, you really don't get what this is trying to be if you're giving me that feedback. But the in-betweeny ones are the ones where absolutely, as you say, Kate, the thing where they're saying, well, it's like when people say it's too long. The cure is very often not to cut 20,000 words.
Yeah.
Unless they're actually saying it's just the print bill. But even then, actually, if every single one of those too many words had to be in there and was totally earning its keep, readers wouldn't be saying it's too long.
That is exactly the situation I'm in at the moment, interesting for me anyway. So I got an agent for this book when it was 140,000 words, which, as we all know, is far, far too long for a memoir, but felt like the right length. And with the agency, I cut it to 128,000 before it went out to publishers, which is still wildly long for a memoir.
Long for a memoir, yeah.
And I think we're going to land for the final text at about 120, which again is still long. And what's been fascinating as we've gone through is everyone in that process from a publishing industry side has completely reasonably said, we want to take some words out of this. And I've said, yes, that's fine. I'm happy with that. But then when they have taken out, so often what they take out is the things which are not serving an obvious narrative purpose. That's often thematic. And it's descriptive. And so if I pull out what they're suggesting, the text ends up being really quite bland, and it loses a lot of what it is that we all agree is what's good about the book as it is. And so actually I've ended up putting a lot of it in, and I'm happy to justify that. Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky. I've had really good editors, I think, to work with, but they're not necessarily right about what they're suggesting.
Is a to and fro about that, and sometimes one is too trained by school to think that the person commenting on your work is basically telling you what's wrong and what will get you a better mark if you fix it. Actually, editors, one should see their stuff it's in pencil. It's often raising a question. For you to produce a creative response rather than merely doing what you're told response. And it just depends. And I think if you've got if the editor's in tune with the book and in sympathy with the book, then absolutely you can say, we need this for the colour, we need this for the theme.
And it's part of developing your confidence as the writer of this work, I think, as well. Sort of shifting from that, this is the teacher telling me what to do, to I know this book better than everyone else. I am the person who has created it thus far, and it's wonderful to have input. It's incredibly valuable, and it's helping me improve it. But ultimately, I have to be the one who makes this decision on it, because I actually know how all of these pieces fit together, and what I'm getting from somebody else is a first impression or a second impression. It's sort of, there's something about stepping confidently into that role of saying, I am the author of this, which is a phase I didn't have with the storyteller, I think, because Robert edited it very, very lightly, and something I have to be more certain of this time round, which is it's a fantastic learning experience.
Indeed, in a sense, if they've contracted it, then it's a much more equal relationship, because they're acknowledging they want the book. They're just coming to you with ideas for what could make it work even better. I think it's trickier when you're trying to get a publisher or get an agent, because they have much more power. They can just say, I just think it's too long, or whatever it is, I just don't know how it works. And you can say, yes, but much as you like, and if they don't think it works, then they're not going to buy
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. And I think that can genuinely be hard, and I'm not sure I have the answer. I know I don't have the answer to that one. But yet I think confidence in it's easy to say have confidence. Some of it just comes from doing the damn thing. Ray Bradbury in Zen and the Art of Writing, which is a brilliant book, said something about quantity breeds experience. Only from experience can quality come. And he wrote for the pulps. His prose is remarkable. He wrote some of the great books, but he did it by way of, and he says if the 54 stories that you write in your first year, I mean, boy, if that's productive, 47 of them are dire. Okay, cool. That's just what it takes to get there. And actually, I going back to what we were saying about kind of making one's peace with things, that there being no such thing as perfect, is recognizing that it's a thing that needed to be written. It doesn't necessarily need to be perfect, and certainly at the beginning, it probably won't be. I'm not sure there is such a thing as a perfect novel anyway. Actually, they're just too damn big. They have too many moving parts that have to be reconciled with each other. Poems, possibly, and maybe short stories.
Yeah, maybe short stories. It's one of the things about going back to the sort of acknowledged really great writers, actually, that you can read through them and say, well, that's not a so supposedly technically correct way of doing that, and nor is that, and yet this is still a great novel, which is a fantastic relief.
Even leaving aside technically correct, that one, that scene was a bit boring, but actually,
but it works.
On novel plots, it depends on the plot, but if there's a lot of engineering, sometimes we have to. Yeah, it just has to be like that.